Okay, now you're looking at Genesis 1:2. Top line is the way you pronounce the words. This is the standard pronunciation transliteration that's used for pastors. I can't stand the system any more than, it's just as bad as the Wade Giles system. They make crazy little assumptions about the letters, like they translate sheen with a little thing over the S. It's very confusing. I don't like it. But you have to learn it if you're going to learn it in seminary. Okay, so we're looking at 1:2. Now this is the real important verse that Christians and evolutionists all miss. It's really embarrassing when we make a mistake in Bible, and this is one of them. It's okay, we're learning, so let's just correct it and not belabor the point that we got it wrong. Okay, this is the BHS text again. Okay, we're looking at right here. Okay? Wa'ha'eretz. Okay? The wa here, and my pastor spent a lot of time explaining this in his Genesis tapes, is called an adversative wow. They don't use that term anymore in theology. The first letter, I can't get the mouse to just focus on the wa. Just to the right of where the cursor is blinking, that's the wow, with the little shua underneath it, the double dots. Wa is used to mean and, but, so, instead. So the question is, you have to look at the context. Well, how do you know how to translate it? Well, we know to translate it as but. And here's why we know. Here in the Greek, LXX, we got this, the. And if you look below, you see the lexicon, just Thayer's is showing, not Bauer-Dinker's. They're all scrolled underneath. But da is used, and you can find this out anywhere. You should be able to, unless modern Greek scholarship is really tanked. Okay, first of all, we got the hey. There. Hey is the definite article ho. That's used as a relative pronoun, all right? And then you got da, but da is where we're getting from the meaning for the wow. All right, that first letter in the Hebrew is being translated by this da. Da is a conjunction of contrast. They usually call it in seminary a conjunction of mild contrast. But that's not really the best way to think of da. Da is always a transitional particle. Okay? I believe it's also used to stress the transition in Hebrews 10:5, but I don't want to look there now because I'm going to waste time in the video. Okay, da is used as a transitional particle. What it's doing is it's saying, hi, I just told you one thing, now I'm going to tell you that thing I just told you about changed. There is a change being stressed in Genesis 1:2. In other words, the whole thing was done over a long or short period of time, whatever, in Genesis 1:1. But now, after it got done, something changed. So all that stuff that Christians say about Genesis being the initial creation of the earth and the universe is flat wrong. Please absorb that. There's a contrast being introduced by the particle da. And that's what the adversative, that's how we know that this wa here, first letter to the right of the cursor, is an adversative wow, wa. I think they call it a vav today. Alright? So something changed so it's like but the earth. But the earth. Not and the earth. Let me move this down so you can see the translation. Okay? You'll notice that in the translation they leave the wa out. And that's sometimes alright to do. Here it's not. Alright? Because you have cheda. Hey standing for the earth because it's a feminine noun. Come on, mouse. Hey da. Gay. The world. Alright, now your second big hint that something changed is in this little verb here, which is being used to translate. That's aimi. Alright, come on, cursor. Come on, cursor. Aimi. See aimi? Modern Hebrew is ime. First person is used as the vocabulary form of the verb. Alright, ain, or ain rather, is in the imperfect. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, wait a minute. All right? That's the imperfect. The imperfect in Greek is used to translate the imperfect in Hebrew, and that's exactly what we have here. Okay? We have wa, ha'eretz. All right? And there you have the verb hawa, which is, I better put that up so you can see the pronunciation. Okay? Hayat. The T is a feminine ending for the verb. Hayat. It's imperfect. See in the lower left-hand screen? Haya. This is one of the verbs that's used to create the word for, it's a sacred tetragrammaton, the last half of it. Verb cal perfect. To be. You know, because God's name is to be, really. Absolute existence. Haya is a very old verb, but hawa is another version of it that's even older. That's why you got Yahweh. The point is that it's haya is in the imperfect. All right. Well, actually, perfect here. Oh, that's interesting. Sorry. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, look. The world became something. It was the first totalities in Genesis 1:1, and now the earth became something else. Because you got Hain here. So see, the translation is off. They should have noticed what the Greek is doing. The Greek is using the imperfect. Oh, that is so clever. To show a change in status, which the adversative wow, with the translated by da, also shows, so that it was complete. Oh wow, that's just what my path. Okay, the perfect in Genesis 1:1 is now being paralleled. There's more to say about this, but wait a minute. The perfect in Haya, to show that it became perfectly bad. All right, you'll know that when you see the rest of it. This here is tohu. Tohu wa bohu. Let me go through that again a little slower. Tohu is a really important word in the Bible. It's used a lot of other times in the Bible. Tohu, and then there's wa, which means and. Bohu. Now, tohu and bohu are severally used in the rest of the Bible to tell you, to refer back to this verse. Okay? Tohu, as you'll see in the lower left-hand corner, it's translated there confusion, but it really means chaotic, chaos. Okay, so we started in Genesis 1:1, we had perfect creation finish, and now we have a perfect confusion. Now, if you really should do this, if you're into the Hebrew at all, search on tohu in the Old Testament. It's really interesting what you're going to come up with. My pastor spent some time going through that, but you can do a word search and see it yourself. And then bohu is also separately used. Tohu wa bohu. In future videos, I'll go through some of those uses. So here's the translation. Wa ha'eretz hayat tohu wa bohu. And the earth, but the earth became. And you'll see that in the NIV. They actually figured that out. Tohu wa bohu. Became chaos and a wasteland. Bohu means wasteland. And you'll see, and it's used, the Bible tracks this. It's always referring back to Genesis 2 when it does that. Because God is making analogy to us being a wasteland in our souls. Now, when my pastor covers this, and I really recommend you get his stuff on Genesis and Satanology, he explains, and he's not the only one, you can find this pretty much on the internet. This tohu wa bohu status that became hayat, is the angelic conflict period. That the universe was trashed, and at least the corner, the quadrant, the little tiny quadrant that constitutes Earth's section of the universe, all the lights were put out. I mean, angels' bodies are made of light. They had a big war, and they destroyed a lot of stars and planets. All right? Now, my pastor covers this. He's not the only one, but at the time he did it, he might have been the only one. I don't know. This was back in the 1960s when he covered it. His Satanology series is 1967, and I can't remember his Genesis series. I think it's 1972 or 77. Might be earlier. All right. So we have, but the earth became tohu wa bohu, chaos and wasteland. So the story you're going to get from Genesis 1-2 onwards is what God did to restore the earth from the conflict. This keyword tohu wa bohu is used for the angelic conflict also. It's also used for the wasteland of our souls after sin. So right there you know that some undefined period in the past, all right, the earth was created, everything finished, the universe, but now we know, but, wow, ha'eretz, the earth, hayat, became, finished destruction, tohu, chaos, wa bohu, all right, wasteland. All right. Now, what you get in the rest of the verse is how the Holy Spirit restored it. Okay, so we say, wa hoshek. It's interesting how the vowel pointed that. Okay, and it was complete darkness. So that means all the lights were out. I mean, stars can explode. Angels' bodies are made of light. It's not too hard to understand that they could do that. Okay? Al Pani, face. Al is, I should have covered that. I'm sorry. I forget that I should explain these things. Al means it's got a connotation of upness. That's why it's really related to, even though it uses the ayin, it's related in sound to the prefix of el for God. And Isaiah plays on that sound a lot. It's a connotation of upness, the thing that's foremost in front of you. Okay, so, and the face, upon the face, you could say. Darkness, hoshek, wahoshek, upon el, the face, pani. Okay, and now you got here, tahoim, tahem. Tachom is how they've spelled, tachom, the deeps, the like Mariana's Trench and all that, the lowest parts of the earth. Ruach, this is one of the words for the Holy Spirit. Ruach, wa of course is and the Holy Spirit. Ruach means holy, spirit rather. Elohim, that tells you he's God, hello. Second person of the Godhead, or third person of the Godhead introduced, hello. Okay? This is my favorite verb. Ma, ra, chef, fet. Marachefet. Okay? Unfortunately, marachef, and that's the Hebrew verb rahef, you've seen it down at the bottom. It's in the PL stem. PL is intensive stem. Participle. Notice the Holy Spirit is treating himself like a mother hen. Really what rahaf means is a mother hen brooding over her chicks. So I call the Holy Spirit Mom because of this. The Holy Spirit broods over us, as it were, broods over us to care for us. Okay, God's making an analogy to that future by showing how the Holy Spirit is the one who restores. Get the pun? The Holy Spirit's restoring the earth just like the Holy Spirit restores us. The Holy Spirit's saving the earth from its destruction, tohu wa bohu, and now the Holy Spirit's going to restore it. The Holy Spirit saves us, does the actual, salvation act of making us born again. That's Titus 3:5. And is brooding over us like mother chick, like a mother over her chicks. Okay? To save us. So you see, when God starts out speaking about Genesis, Genesis means the origin of man, specifically the man, Jesus the Christ. That's the analogy God is making. So the point of God telling you this story is like, hi, if I'm going to, restore the earth with all this love and care, like a hen brooding over her chicks, what do you think I'm going to do to you? Aren't you more precious than sparrows? So that's the perspective that the Bible has. Now, again, if you look at the Greek, you've got da. That means that's transitional. Hi, something had changed. Gay, the world. Hey, ain, rather, became. Imperfect. Auratas. Alright? Unseen and invisible isn't quite the only meaning of aurata. It's talking about, how do you want to call it? Not quite formless. Formless isn't it either. Chaos is another word to use for it. Alright, kai, that's the and. Here's where you really know. Okay? Unformed isn't really a good translation of akadaskeosatas. Wait a minute. Akadaskeostas. Akadaskeostas. I have trouble with long Greek words. Alright? Skeo means a container, a dwelling, a vessel. Alright? It's used famously for Christ in the New Testament. And it is implying that it's uncontained, but it's also like a wilderness is uncontained. Wild would be a good way to look at this. Okay? And you know that because it's got kai again. Skotas. Now, remember, Genesis 1:1, everything was done. So this is an entirely different status. God doesn't make a wasteland. In fact, there's a verse on that later on in the Bible where he's telling you, I didn't make the world a late wasteland. Because he's relying on you understanding that Genesis 1:2 means the earth became a wasteland on its own. Here's how you know. Skotas. Okay? Blank. Dark. Wasteland. Obviously it would be a wasteland if the lights went out. There's nothing to grow. Okay? And then here's epano. Alright? I'm letting you read the bottom of epano. Alright? And then tisabusu. That's the abusas is another word for deeps. It's famously used in Revelation 9 when the demons, not humans, come out in 200 million in number. Okay, kai. Pneuma. Notice that pneuma is an arthrus here. There is no definite article. It's not to pneuma, it's pneuma. He's God. And of course that's stressed when you see tohu here. Tohu. And then you have epipepheto. Epiphereto, sorry. Epiphereto. There we go. Finally got it. Epiphereto. Or you could say epiphereto. Epiphereto. Okay, there's a pano again. Two hudatas. Hudatas. Hudas means, hudar rather, means water. So you see, it's basically saying the same thing in Genesis. But your big key is this thing here, da. Change, hello. God didn't make the world tohu wabohu. He made it perfect. Tohu wabohu came later. That's how you know that this wow here, to the right of the cursor, is an adversative wow, translated by da. So now everything that's going to follow in Genesis, alright, is talking about the restoration of the earth, not its initial creation. And yes, it's 6 literal days, as you'll see. Okay, we're still on Genesis 2. I'm going to change it though. We're going to show what the tohu wa bohu verses are in this episode. But I first need to review a couple of things that I got wrong in my last episode. This word here is ha. See, if you got the H is the first letter with comments underneath. Ha-yi-ta. Hayita. Hayita, actually, the last syllable is stress. That little diacritical mark that's going off to the left is an accent mark. Hayita. Alright, so that's the Cal Perfect. That's the Cal Perfect of Haya. And I didn't pronounce it right, I was just saying Haya. So I wanted to fix that. And then the next thing is I didn't show you the sample translation so you can see why we get it wrong in English. Formless and void just doesn't cut it, okay? And the other translations are not any better. See, I mean, I've got a whole bunch of them, but all these translations here, this is the New American Standard, this is the NIV. NIV has there's another version of the NIV which says became. It's footnoted. Instead of saying was, it's footnoted. My hard copy of the NIV has that footnote in it, but I don't know how commonly available it is now. I gave my NIV away to somebody, so I can't show it to you on screen. Here's the KJV, I always say that wrong. See, without form and void. Now see, we're thinking from a modern perspective, from an evolutionary idea that things formed over time, so we would expect it to be without form in the beginning, but that's as you've just seen, that's the exact opposite of what the Bible is saying. It became without form. God didn't make it that way. And you're going to see in this episode, hopefully, I'll have enough time to show you the verse that says that God didn't make it this way. Alright, so it's the earth became. All you have to do is change that word was to became. And change this to but. But the earth became. Now, without form is not really good. It should say the earth became chaotic and a wasteland. Alright? And your key word that you would know that, even in English, darkness. Darkness? God is light. He didn't create darkness. Darkness came as a result of. Alright, and it's the angelic conflict. And there are enough pastors teaching the angelic conflict out there that this ought to be common knowledge, and I don't know why it isn't. This is Breton's English translation of the Greek here. Here's the Greek. It's a compilation of manuscripts that BibleWorks uses. Alright, so as you can see, the translations are failing here. And there's no excuse for it at all. But the other thing I had stopped yesterday's tape at Merahef. I love that word. Hefet, rather. Should have looked at the T. And then I did Al-Pani. See, the mouse, the display doesn't work real well. Okay, but this is the word I left out. Okay. That's ha, and then that little dot inside the M there, see, the M even looks like a mouth. Hebrew letters are mouth pictures. They tell you how to say the letter, by going from right to left of the letter. That's the airflow. Alright, and like with this H here at the beginning, you see that the hay, the air is coming out of the top of it, the top of your mouth. You're basically saying H in your throat, and you're letting the airflow come out through the top of your mouth. Alright? So this is ha, ma, and that's got an accent mark. And then this is yim. Alright? That's the Y, the yod, and that's the mem. Okay, so it's ha, ma, yim. Now ha, ma, yim, as you can see in the lower left-hand corner, is waters, plural. Now, when my pastor explained this, it makes a lot of sense. He said, if you're trying to date when the earth was restored, this description gives you a sense of an interglacial period. Now, if you look on the internet, you should be able to look up a word called Pangea, P-A-N-G-E-A. That's part of the theory of continental drift, which was made famous by Wegener, early 1900s. Continental drift is based on something called plate tectonics, and plate tectonics can either be slow, which is continental drift, or fast, which is an earthquake. Basically has to do with something called subduction. It's like the whole earth has got this crust, and it's broken crust. And at first, according to the theory of continental drift and how it all got started, there was all the land mass was joined together, and they call that Pangea in science. And at some point, it broke up, and the land then came to the surface. It was all below water, and it came up to surface. Now, they're positing that it was slow, but we know that earthquakes are fast, so there's nothing to tell you but that it could have been fast. You wouldn't know. You really wouldn't. There'd be no way to tell, because the slow method, then the accretion of the silt and all that stuff would have filled it in. And, nobody can go down to the Marianas Trench and date it. And they can't, go through all the fissures down at the very bottom of the sea and date all that stuff. So there's no way to know if it really happened slow or fast. So, I don't really care about this, but a lot of people seem to think that, the trustworthiness of the Bible is dependent on it agreeing with science. Well, I'm sorry, science is the one that's slow. But if you really feel that badly about it, here's something scientific you can go look at. Pangea is something in science. That's how I learned it. I learned it in geology class in college. And you can look it up on the internet. There's stuff in Encarta Encyclopedia about it. There ought to be something in Encyclopedia Britannica. So the positing of the time when this happened, you could argue that it was during an interglacial period. You could also argue, although the dating will be, very much older, you could argue that this is Pangea breaking up, or this is when Pangea broke up, okay, because everything was underwater. The same thing is true, by the way, with the Genesis 6 flood. The Bible's account is what we would call in modern science subduction, that there was a breakup, a sudden breakup. It's like a worldwide earthquake occurring, and that's where the water came from. It didn't come from the sky. It did rain for 40 days and 40 nights, but that's not enough water to drown everybody. But an earthquake would be. All right, we've seen enough modern earthquakes to know just how destructive they can be, and it's just a question of scale. The tsunamis that occurred in 2005 arose primarily because of movement under the earth. So, if you're concerned about that kind of thing, and it makes you feel good about Bible, well, there's something that you can look up and feel good about. I don't know if it's true that, it ties to Pangea. I honestly don't know. As far as I'm concerned, God can do whatever he wants, and I don't care what science says. If it agrees, fine. If it disagrees, fine. Science is always groping in the dark, and that's fine. It's good that science gropes in the dark. Science and skeptic begin with an S for a reason, and I think that's good. But for my purposes, it's like, well, they're all behind where God is on anything. So if they discover something, I'm happy about it. If they don't, big deal. So if you want to date this, figure that this happened during an interglacial period, for example, like 10,000 BC or something. It might be even farther back than that because of the Pangea concept. Bible does not tell you when. Okay, that's the most important thing to get out of this verse. At some point after initial creation, there was a war in heaven, all right, and as a result of angels being constructed the way they are, their bodies being made of light, they can do serious damage to matter and energy. All right, and they can put the lights out, and did. So now we're looking at the restoration of the earth, not its initial creation in the rest of the Genesis account. All right, now I'm going to stop this episode for the moment here and continue it in a minute because I've got to reset up the computer.